So like I was saying, you know, today may be a little helpful to you because we are talking about negotiating skills as well as politics and networks today. So obviously we know there's politics everywhere. There's politics at school, in your classes, at work, and today we're gonna talk mostly about workplace politics, but I think you'll be able to kind of, you know, apply some of this to other places or other organizations that you're in. So basically we know that, you know, there's good politics, there's bad politics, there's formal politics and informal politics, and I think that it's important to know that all politics are not bad. I think a lot of times when we talk about politics, we think about politics, we automatically attach a negative connotation to it. And there can be some positive politics sometimes. And we'll talk a little bit about those, but we're gonna start with the bad first. So what breeds negative politics? Lack of organizational goals. If the organization has no goals, no clear structure, no communication, it breeds negative politics. And I've seen this happen. I've worked in organizations where this happens, so I know that it's true. The type of leadership might determine what type of politics you have in your organization. If you have someone that's autocratic, very by the book, do as I say, my way, the highway kind of leadership, sometimes breeds negative politics. If you have an organization where there are multiple layers of management, organizations are structured differently. Some are very flat, may just have a top level and then everyone else. Other organizations will have multiple levels of management, and those are the ones where you may see more politics. Why do you think that's the case? More people. More people, more personalities, more attitudes, more likes, more dislikes. Again, communication. If there's a lot of communication going downward but not much coming back up, obviously that may also breed negative politics. What about this one? Frequent changes. Have you ever worked in a place, and you may be experiencing this because you're in a new area right now where I'm sure they're making a lot of changes. Changes can oftentimes breed negative politics, and it happens because sometimes with changes, we don't have communication. So everybody is left assuming things, wondering what's going on, taking things into their own hands. So frequent changes can often breed negative politics, as well as changes in power or management shifts. Sometimes, you know, when management changes, they take the people they like with them, or they leave the people they don't like behind, et cetera, et cetera. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, when I was in the service, we went through 12 first sergeants, which was upper management. 12 different first sergeants in a 8-year span.
Which is a lot.
That's a lot.
Almost, what, one per year? A little more than one per year.
More than one per year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And just imagine how.
And soldiers were.
Yeah.
Soldiers were out. I mean, in and out, in and out. We couldn't keep them.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
And obviously, poor relationships. If there's poor relationships going on, there's not good interpersonal relationships, people don't like people, people are trying to throw people under the bus, those types of things are obviously going to breed negative politics. Which brings us to games. Political games. We've all heard them, we've all seen them. Here are a few. Taking advantage of people happens, right? Mm-hmm. Abusing friendships. Probing for weakness. Have you ever seen an employee or a manager stalk out that person, that weakest link, and just hone in on them and pick on them because they know they can? It's a political game. Undermining operations or new services. Starting rumors. This happens all the time. Or providing misleading information. Creating crisis. Sometimes people will create trouble on purpose to distract you from other things that may be going on. And you'll sometimes hear people say that the media does that, where they'll create this hysteria about a certain topic to distract people from other things that are going on in the country. Political games. Displaying undue emotional distress. Why me, right? Discrediting teammates and intimidating new employees. I'm gonna pick on you because you're a new employee. Tell us how you feel. Are you feeling intimidated?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore, but you were.
Yeah.
You think it was a political game?
Maybe.
You know, when you're new and you're coming into an organization, people want you to know who they are. So sometimes they'll play these political games with hopes that you'll say, oh, that's so-and-so, can't mess with them. Or I better stay away from this person, or et cetera, right? Political games. So you went through some intimidation.
Yeah, it was not even like the managers or supervisors, just the co-workers.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the same as me.
This isn't just top-down management to employee political games. I actually think more politics probably happens among your peers. Competition kind of thing. Now we'll talk about managers' political games. Stealing ideas or credit from others. And I think a lot of these will deal with people either trying to maintain where they are or they're trying to climb higher, you know, when we're speaking in terms of managers. So obviously, you have this great idea, you present it, and then someone comes behind and says, oh yeah, you know, I came up with that idea. That was my idea, right? Or you share your idea, and before you can even roll it out, somebody else has beat you to it. Happens between managers sometimes. Excluding others from meetings or information. This is definitely a big one because sometimes managers will try to hoard information because, you know, knowledge is power. So the more certain people know, they feel like they have more power. So as a result, they may keep so-and-so out of a meeting. I may say, I'm gonna have a meeting with you two. I'm not inviting you two. And then what happens is, when they find out that there was a meeting, it breeds those negative attitudes, which develops that negative politics. Eliminating or downgrading the jobs of employees, and assigning unpleasant tasks. Now, we talked about delegation sometimes, and this happens. Sometimes managers will delegate tasks that are unpleasant to people they don't like. And they probably don't have much say-so in whether they can do it or not, right? Political game. What about putting one employee against another? Have you experienced it?
I haven't experienced, but I know it happens
Yeah.
a lot. It happens a lot.
Yeah. Evaluations, giving unfair or false evaluations or performance appraisals, and not hiring employees who might be threatening to them. They're afraid of their job security, worried about if this sharp young, and you guys may experience this because you'll be graduating soon, you'll be coming fresh out of school, you'll have the knowledge that someone that's been working for 20 years may not have. You may appear to be very sharp, and as a result, you may not get hired. So when you're going through the job process, you have to know that sometimes it's not always about you, and it's not always about you not being a good candidate. It might be totally the opposite. It might be that you are a great candidate, but that hiring manager does not want to bring you in. They feel threatened. So we talked about the negative, the bad. Let's talk a little bit about some positive. Because as I said, there's both negative and positive positives. Assertiveness. What about when you have a belief about something, you stand up for it because you think it's the right thing to do? Positive, right? Positive politics. And building rapport with people. We're talking about building, good relationships with people, treating people with respect, those types of things. These are ways that you can build positive politics, meaning you can earn people's respect get them in your corner so that when you do have, you know, something you need to roll out, you'll have support. So again, we come back to this networking thing. You know, we talked about this last week, and you guys really, I think, really took an interest to our discussion on networking. And so here we see it again in this chapter. And why do you think that it came back again?
Because it's important.
It's directly related to politics. The people you know is going to affect probably whether you have negative or positive politics. So let's think for a moment. If we're an organization and, you know, we're a manager and we're looking to move up, networking is going to be key, along with positive politics and building those relationships, so that again, when it comes time for your promotion or for an idea that you're trying to roll out, you have support. So here's some more benefits of networking. Obviously, we talked about mentoring, learning about job opportunities. This is important because if you've done that positive politics, and you have several mentors that are looking out for you, you'll probably be one of the first people to hear about that job. Is it fair? Probably not, but it's benefiting you as a result of you networking and developing those positive politics, right? So sometimes politics can work in your favor, sometimes it may not work in your favor. Becoming aware of the availability of job candidates, again, when companies are hiring, if you're in with the right people, you may know about the candidates and who they're hiring. You may even have some input as to what type of candidate they may hire. Soliciting recommendations for support and sharing experiences. So, talking more about networking, and here's some characteristics. You guys are saying, you know, how do I get out there? How do I network? What do I do? Here are some suggestions. So number one, you know how to interact with people. Now, you said that you are an introvert. Michelle, our introvert, she's shy. She's in a little shell. Now, does being an introvert necessarily mean that she does not know how to interact with people? Because I think that she can interact with people just fine. So it's important to know that there's a difference. So there's hope. There's hope for you. There's hope for introverts. Because you can still be an introvert to a certain degree. Just as long as you know how to interact with people, you still may be okay with networking. What that may mean is there may be a networking event, and there's going to be some people that are there from beginning to end. And there are going to be some people that are there for 30 minutes. That doesn't necessarily mean that those two people can't have the same effect. It's all about how you interact with people, how you work the room. There's going to be some people that stand and talk to somebody for 30, 45 minutes. If you're an introvert, you're probably not going to do that, but it doesn't mean that you can't walk up to someone, shake their hand, and have a 5-minute conversation with them. If you have a 5-minute conversation, in 30 minutes you talk to 6 people, right? That's good, right? Especially for an introvert. So it's important to know that it's okay to be shy, but you got to know how to interact with people.
That's what happened with the first event, my first networking event, when I went with Ms. Thomas and we went to the nursing home. I was just standing there, and they were all talking and chit-chatting and going across the room, and I was just like, okay, I'm just going to be the student. I'm just going to stand here. And then this one lady came over and introduced herself, and then after that, after she did that, that kind of like break the mold. So I joined in the conversations and then started talking to more people. But yeah, it was kind of, it's like uncomfortable. Yeah, it was really awkward because I was just standing like, okay. And they was all talking.
I'm like you. And I went to a job fair, and I talked to, I guess, about maybe 5 people. There was like 20 people there, 20 companies. And I probably talked to 5 because I'm very, very shy when it comes to talking, you know, because I'm so scared I'm going to say the wrong thing. So I went to a couple of people and I just said, hi, my name is Mary Jason. I'd like to drop off my resume. I was in the military, blah, blah, blah. And that's all I said. And I got 4 phone calls out of the 5 people that I talked to. And I got 1 interview out of the 4 people that called me. And I got 1 job offer. But I didn't take the job. I declined it because I decided to come to school instead. But I couldn't believe it because I didn't talk to a whole bunch of people. But I was very nervous. See, because I get nervous talking in class. But, you know, you just have to go and try to do your best. And it works out. It works out.
And make sure those people remember you.
Yeah. Just say the most important things. That's all you gotta do.
Short and sweet.
Yep.
So that's,
And make sure they write your name in their resume too. You know they want to call you. That's how I know. I remember, now I remember I spoke to the manager who hired me. She wrote something on my resume, and that's the person who calls me. So,
I was just gonna say, even if you, like you said, you're shy, as long as you talk to the key people that are, you know, going to be important for you.
Yeah, the guy that I did my co-op with, he wrote my name and he wrote down when I graduated. And he was like, are you going to be in state? I said, no, I won't be in state. He was like, dang. But he said he still wanted to keep in touch with me if I ever came back before grad.
so all good things, and you know, talking to key people was, I think, a good idea. But sometimes you may not know who the key people are, right?
Right.
So what do? You observe for a minute. When you walk in somewhere, you may just stand back for about 5 minutes and watch. If you observe, you'll know who the key people are. You'll know by how people are interacting with them, and usually the key people are very outgoing. So sometimes if you just watch for a little bit, you can kind of tell. Sometimes you won't know, so that'll mean you just gotta kind of work the room. And like you said, it can be a little awkward, especially when you're just arriving. I find that what some people do is they kind of just, you know, usually in those settings there's clusters set up with different people talking. You just walk up to one cluster, eventually somebody's gonna say something to you, or you may say something.
It's hard too, though.
And that's kind of just how it starts. And then as that conversation goes on, some people leave that cluster, other people join that cluster.
That's how it was.
Yeah. So, and you know, we can talk a little bit more about this in detail later if you want. So second thing, keeping in touch. We talked about this one as well. Just because you gain that contact and you have that golden card, you got to do more with it than just, you know, let them pile up at home on your desk or something. You got to keep in touch. And like I said before, even if that's just 1 to 2 times a year, you want to make sure that you stay, that the person can remember you to a certain degree. If you don't contact them, then they won't. I've had times where I've went out places and I re-met somebody that I already met, and I didn't remember, and it was because either one or both of us did not keep in touch. Right? 3, active joiners. And this can mean one of several things. Number 1, it could mean what we just talked about. When you go to a place and you're an active joiner, you're okay with joining the different conversations in the different groups. Number 2, it could mean you're an active joiner with regards to organizations. You're always looking to join new organizations. So you can take this multiple ways. And number 4, they circulate at parties and meetings. Like I just said, especially if this is a networking event or this is an event that you are trying to make a networking event, you can't just stay in the same place the whole time. Even if the people you're talking to are the only people you know in the room, you still need to circulate at parties and meetings. Even if it's just to say hi, even if it's somebody you've already met before in the past, just circulate anyway, shake their hand, it's good to see you again, keep it moving. Here's some more. Obviously, this is a given. You're cordial, you're courteous to everybody. That's something we all should know. Use your breaks to chat with different people. When I first started working in my first real, professional job, I tried to go to lunch with different people to learn more about them, to create those relationships. And most people will, make time. I tried to seek out people, not necessarily my peers, but I was trying to seek out people that were above me so that I could learn from them and they could know who I was. Because otherwise they weren't gonna know who I was. I was just some student fresh out of school. They weren't gonna know me unless I sought them out. And so lunch is a perfect time. Everybody has to eat. They can't say they're too busy to have lunch, you know, even if it was just for 15, 20 minutes. So that's what I would do. Volunteering. This helps a lot as well, especially if it's a group or a committee that no one else wants to be on. I've done this before where I've joined committees. I don't even want to be on the committee. But I knew that the chair of this committee or the person that was going to be seeing the end result of this committee's work was influential. So I joined it anyway. And I did a good job. And those types of things will bring you exposure as well as open you up to meeting new people. So remember, it's not always going to be about things you want to do. Sometimes you just have to bear it and do some things that you don't want to do if it's going to help you be a successful networker. And they teach, coach, and mentor. I still currently serve as a mentor for students at the University of Florida for the healthcare management master's program there. Some people say, why do you still do that? And you know, I say, well, of course, the number one reason is because I want to give back and I want to help people as people help me. But also, just because someone is, you know, necessarily below me or not as, you know, advanced in their career, they're still in school, I still don't know who they might know. My mentee could have a dad that's a vice president somewhere, right? So it's always important to, you know, remember to give back because it's a good thing to do, but also this is more networking as well. Or sometimes what happens is, and I've seen this happen, is somebody you mentor takes off and goes farther than you do, and somewhere down the road, you need them. Because again, you never know what connections they may have, so they may move up faster than you. So it's important to teach, coach, and mentor. One more slide about successful networkers, and I'm taking my time through this because, like I said, I thought that you guys showed a strong interest in networking. Serve as officers in social and professional organizations. At some point, all of you all should be serving as officers in organizations, whether it be church, you know, community, work. It's just good experience. It's good leadership experience. It's great exposure. And so, you know, that's definitely a to-do you should have on your list. Maybe something you add to your action plans. They go out of their way to establish relationships with newcomers. Now let's stop right here. Why might that make someone a successful networker? Let's say you have someone joining your organization, you don't even work with them, but you're going to go out of your way to establish a relationship with them.
Would it go back to what you said? You still don't know who they may know.
You don't know who they might know. Again, you don't know how fast they're going to move up in the organization, and it just develops good interpersonal relationships in general. They share clippings, reports, articles, other information. This one's important because if you're sharing information with people, it's going to build trust. People are going to respect you. They're going to trust you. They're going to see that you're willing to share. And so this goes along with that positive politics. You're building relationships with people. People are going to start depending on you. Who knows, you may become that go-to person for news or new trends or whatever you may have it. So it's exposure, but it's indiscreet exposure. They send out thank you notes, remember birthdays, special occasions, etc. This is a great way to do that follow-up when you're contacting people you've already met. Sure, you may not know their birthday or their anniversaries or whatever, but you can always send a thank you note out or say, I met you a year ago, and I just wanted to say hi and thank you again because you provided me with some great tips on how to become a better professional, etc., etc. And they express their appreciation for favors in special ways. This is important because if you use special ways to express your appreciation, people won't forget. People won't forget that you sent that handwritten card in the mail versus sending an email, because no one does that anymore. People, you know, they won't forget that you asked them out to lunch, because no one does that. So when you're expressing appreciation, try to think of creative or special ways that will be memorable so that people won't forget you. So we've talked about ways that you can be a successful networker. Well, this is going to include your boss. You got to network with your boss too, to a certain degree, right? Why do you think? Because to a certain degree, they determine your future.
Yeah, but what if, like, I had a problem, that's what I had a problem with in the Army. I did it so well, I'm gonna say that, because he wouldn't let me go anywhere. He wouldn't let me progress, because when I got the opportunity to move up, he wouldn't let me go. He said, nobody else can do your job, I don't need you to go anywhere. So that's one of the reasons that I got out, because I got an opportunity to move to another department to be able to put it on my, they call it a rating, it's a rating paper. And to be able to put it on my ERB to be able to get promoted to the next level. But he wouldn't let me go, because he said everybody in the company could not do my job. And if I left him, nobody was going to be able to replace me, even though I had 3 other people that I were training. So he wouldn't let me leave. And when I went and talked to someone over him, he told him that, hey, she needs to go, because the sergeant major wanted me to work for him. And my commander said no. So he went and talked to the commander over the sergeant major. And the commander said he don't want her to go. So basically it was a fight. And so I couldn't leave.
You were a hot commodity.
Right, basically. And so I couldn't leave. And we were about to deploy again. And he said that it was either get out or stay with him for the deployment, because he said he couldn't make the deployment without me. So I had to get out.
So he made it without you anyway.
He had no choice,
Right.
but they called me. I mean, he kept, right before I got out, he was like, I'll do anything to keep you in. I said, well, if you send me, let me go work for, because he wanted me to be the NCOIC of S1. I said, well, let me be the NCOIC of S1. And he's like, no, I need you for my company. I was like, well, then we're still at the same point we were, because I can't progress here anymore. There's nothing else for me to do here. And he just wouldn't let me go. So what do you do then?
What do you do then? Well, I'm glad you asked. No. It's a good question. There's going to be some people that you just can't relate with. There's going to be some people that you just go to head to head. There's no compromise.
And I mean, I loved my job. It wasn't about, because if I had the opportunity to stay, family was the main reason I got out, but I loved what I did.
Do you think that you all, prior to this event, do you think that you all had a good relationship?
We did. He listened to me. For the most part, he listened to, for everything that I had, and when I made suggestions and stuff, he listened to me, and we had a good relationship. We had a good working relationship.
I think that's usual, in most cases, that's usually important, is having that good relationship, because I've worked for people that I didn't have a good relationship, didn't have a bad relationship, probably just didn't have much of a relationship at all, and as a result, it kind of led me to events like that.
Right.
So I think that having a good relationship, and by doing that, you have to get to know your manager's likes, dislikes, etc. Your case is a little, I think, special, but these are the things that ordinarily would, I think, help you. I think in your case what happened was your manager or your boss wasn't really concerned about your future. They were just concerned about the work that you were providing, and they realized that you provided great work, but they weren't looking forward to what would be the best for your career development. And you always want to make sure that your boss is actively involved and does care about your career development. You will have some bosses that don't care and they can care less.
Right.
That's usually a red flag that you probably need to move on or move somewhere else.
Right.
Because you want to have someone that cares about what you're doing and where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes to get them to that place is that you have to get to know them, and they have to get to know you also. They have to know what your likes are, what your desires are, what your goals are, as well as you doing the same things for them. So, I mean, you know, that's a good example of probably you making the right decision. Because had you stayed, there's no telling that you wouldn't still be where you were that day, or at that time in the organization. So there's some things that won't ever change when we're talking about networking and things of that nature. And here are some. Goals. Goals will never change. Goals will always be important. It's always going to be, or should always be, a priority on your list. The skills that you need to succeed and be a networker and do the positive politicking, those won't change. And making yourself valuable, that should never change. You should always be striving to make yourself valuable, to improve yourself, to improve your skills, et cetera, because there's always room for growth, there's always room for improvement, and while we may reach success, there's always more to reach, right? So these are the 3 things that will never change. So, you know, you guys are preparing to graduate, and here are some things that may create some challenges for you with regards to trying to develop those relationships and network and do positive politicking. Obviously, we're pressured to do more with less. New technologies, electronic health records, these are all going to be challenges that get in the way of you being able to network, you being able to go talk to your boss. Maybe they'll say, I'm too busy, I'm trying to do, you know, the work for 2 people, and I'm only 1 person, et cetera, et cetera. Mergers. We're gonna see a lot more, I think, hospital mergers and hospitals closing and things of that nature. And it's also, but this could be a positive thing as far as networking, because it's gonna mean more exposure for you. There's gonna be more networking possibilities for you as organizations join together. Vertical job expansion as middle management layers are removed. I think what they're saying is as the funds and the money gets tighter, obviously there's going to be layoffs, and so as a result, they're more than likely going to cut the middle management layer. A more cultural workforce. Again, more opportunities to network, to learn more about other people, to build interpersonal relationships, and a generation gap. People are working longer. Again, more opportunities for you to be successful and grow your network. So now, we're going to get to negotiation skills. We've talked about networking, and you'll see that the 2 relate. The first thing that I want to talk about with negotiation skills is a lot of times people will define leadership differently, but I really do think that leadership really comes down to your ability to influence people. How can you persuade or influence people to follow you, to believe what you believe, to be on board with you and support you? That's what makes a leader effective. So we have a few different ways of negotiation that we're going to go through and talk about a little bit, and we can go into these a little bit more on Thursday if you guys decide to come join me. So the first one is the power play, or the gotcha approach. These are going to be people that are prestigious, or the people that everyone knows have weight, powerful, professional people. And what do you think that people with power or prestigious titles, how might they use this form of negotiation? Well, they say, look at who I am. You know, I'm Dr. Haynes. Why wouldn't you do it my way? Right? Power play. Try to use their power to negotiate and influence people. So how do we cope with these types of people? Well, you gotta have thick skin, because again, they may use their title or their power to downplay you or make you feel less important than you really are. Don't be intimidated. Don't let them intimidate you just because they're a manager or whatever. be. You may need a mediator to step in and kind of be that middle person between you two. And you want to respond to threats appropriately. Again, you do want to remember this person has power, so just be careful about how you respond to the threats. The next form is the haggling approach. Now, I'm sure at some point you guys have all done this if you bought a house, a car, etc. Basically, this is when you ask for more than you expect to get, or promise more than you expect to deliver. So, if I'm buying a car and I go to the lot and the car is $35,000, I probably don't want to offer $15,000, right? Why not?
It's just too low.
It's too low. They're not going to take you serious. Number one. Number two, nobody has time to be going back and forth that much all day. And so they're probably just going to say, you're wasting my time. So it's okay to negotiate, and it's maybe okay to use this approach, but you want to be respectful in how you use this approach. All right, the next one is the high-low dollar approach. This happens when a seller may quote more than they expect to get. Buyer responds with less than they expect to pay. Again, this one's very similar to the haggling approach. It just takes a lot of time that you're going back and forth with this seller or whoever it may be. It's better to either make one offer and then say, this is my number and I'm sticking to it, or, like we said, come up a little bit. Don't start so low. I found that the people that make one offer and stick to it actually gain a lot of respect from the person on the other side, because they're like, wow, they mean business. And, I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but at one point in my life, my career, I used to sell real estate. And so sometimes we would have the buyers that would say, all right, we're paying this, and that's it. And I would say probably more than 50% of the time they ended up getting it, because the seller's like, wow, they're serious, they need business, they're not moving. If we don't do this, they're gonna walk away. So, all right, collaboration or value adding. Obviously, this is the one where we try to come to a compromise, a win-win. This is probably one that's going to get you that positive, because everyone's winning. Now, the other ones we've discussed up into this one probably may breed some of that negative politics, because obviously someone's going to lose, and they may lose big time. So, before we keep going, let's use your example. In your example with your ticket, do you think there will be any of those approaches that your lawyer might use? I think it's going to use this one.
Lower the ticket?
Yeah, and the low dollar is going to be $0.
Yes.
We're not paying anything.
Right.
And that's what we're sticking to. Right?
I think so too.
That's the one I would recommend. I mean, I'm nowhere near a lawyer, but if it were me, this is the one I would use.
I think so too. And I didn't know that lawyers get the tickets in the computer now, because I got I've never gotten a ticket before. So I got like 10. Yeah, I got 10 things in the mail.
That's when you know you're in trouble.
I was like, yeah, Lord. I didn't know that, but I had an attorney, my friend that's in the law firm, the criminal justice firm, she gave me a lawyer's number, but I got like 10 things in the mail, and I was like, how did you know I got a ticket?
Yes.
I didn't know they get it, I guess they get computer things. I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, I think the $0, I think I'm gonna win.
All right, so I only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to quickly go through this list of things you need to do when you're preparing for negotiation. You want to know, when you go in, you want to know what you want. So I already have your wish list. Make sure you have sufficient data to support the reason why you want what you want. You want to make sure that your approach is organized. You want to appear to be organized when you go in to negotiate. You want to make sure you have options that you can offer. Prepare your opening remarks. Know exactly what you're going to say right when you get in there. So your opening remarks should be very strong. Otherwise, I'm not going to take you seriously. Be ready for them to come back with something. So you need to also have your arguments. And if you want, practice with somebody. You know, role play, go ahead and act it out. Have someone sit in to be the opposing side so that you can practice what you're going to do. And choose a good time and place. So what happens during negotiation? Here are some major steps. You're clarifying interests. You want to focus on the points of agreement. Think about possible options and agree on the best option. And, you know, perfect the deal and wrap it up. So it sounds pretty simple. We all know it doesn't have that simple, but these are the major steps that happen at some point throughout the negotiations. Some negotiations aren't going to go right. Some are going to be challenging, some are going to be difficult, and it may be because there are some barriers. And here are some of the barriers. You're scared. Everybody, I'm nervous when I go into negotiate sometimes because you don't know what's going to happen. So there's kind of the fear of the unknown. Secrecy, you don't know what the other person has in their hand. You know, we don't know what, you know, if they have a full house or what they may have. There may be some deadlines or ultimatums that you may not be able to meet. Somebody may get angry, right? Emotions. There may be a team approach. Sometimes there may be instances where you may go in alone and they may have a team. And that may feel intimidating in itself. Reliance on data and delaying tactics. So, how about you get some good practice with negotiation? You might want to start with your boss. Now you may be saying, Dr. Haynes, that's crazy. I'm not going to negotiate with my boss. I'm just going to do whatever they say and do it right. But there's going to be moments where you two disagree. And so, sure, you may not want to go in with a haggling approach. Maybe you want to start off by using a collaborative approach with your boss and negotiating that way. And then after you kind of get comfortable, then you can build your way up to the other different types of negotiating. But it's important to know that if there's something you feel strongly about, you feel like it's right, it's the right thing to do, then you should be strong enough to stand up to your boss. And now you'll have the correct tactics or the knowledge of negotiation to be able to do it correctly, respectfully, and not in a disrespectful manner. It's always important to put your request in writing. Again, you never want your boss to say, I forgot, or I don't recall that, or when your boss is stealing your idea, or whatever it may be. So always make sure that you put your request in writing. And again, I wanted to save this to circle back to it with your example. Sometimes it may not work out with your boss. And if you guys have some terms that you're trying to come together on and negotiate and it's not working, maybe it's time for you to move on. And that's where you really have to just sit down and evaluate about your future, and is it best that I stay here or is it best that I move on? And that's the case sometimes. Sometimes you just have to move on. So you're not going to win every negotiation. You can go in with the plan to win. You can go in with the thought that you are going to win, but you win some, you lose some. So that's all I have for today. Does anybody have any questions about what we talked about today? Thanks for breakfast.
You want some?
Thank you.
Have a great day.